Welcome to this episode of the Healthy Business Podcast. And I am delighted to welcome the lovely Katy Almstrom today, who is a financial coach for women. And we're going to be delving into lots of different things today, I think. So, we're going to be talking about Katy's story, her journey, and how she's become a financial coach, but also what she's passionate about. So, Katy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, me too. It's always lovely to chat with like-minded women, especially on this podcast, especially when we're talking about helping and empowering other women as well. So today really is a bit of an open journey, an open book, isn't it? And what I love to do with these episodes is to start with the question of what does a healthy business mean to you?
Oh boy. I think we might have just opened a can of worms. Um, and I laugh about this because Sarah and I were just chatting a bit about my summer, and I really went through a process of creating a much healthier business. And so I've been a financial coach. I've worked with women and their families for over 3 years now. And what I realized this summer is that a lot of what I was teaching, um, well, let me back up a little bit. So I spent the first few years really teaching a certain philosophy about money and paying off debt and creating a budget, taking a step by step process to financial freedom that really worked for me in my personal life. And it was something that I really felt confidence with because I had the experience that was so positive. But what I found was that more and more as I worked with other women and other families who had completely different circumstances from me and from each other, is that this was not a one size fits all strategy. And just like in business, while most strategies work if you work them, not every strategy is right for every person. And if you're not doing something that really feels good, that really makes you happy and lit up and feeling truly just feeling joyful on a day-to-day basis, that strategy is going to fall apart because you are not going to want to work it. And I found the same thing to be true with money, with learning how to plan your money, which, many people would say make a budget, right? And pay off debt, create savings, all these things. If we can't find a way to make it a sustainable process, to make it a joyful process, it's just not going to happen. And we create these stories in our head that we're no good at this or this is not something that we can do, and we just feel badly, and it's just this sort of like ongoing cycle. So as far as what is a healthy business for me, it was speaking what I felt was true for more families, for more individuals. I found that saying this one cookie cutter solution does not work for people. We need to really truly listen to our own intuition. We need to really truly understand what the priorities are in our families, and are we making room for that with our money plan? And so speaking that honestly and truthfully to my community has really created for me a healthier business. And it just it boiled down to that, to my messaging and just feeling 100% behind it every single day, no matter who I was talking to.
I love that. It's so important, isn't it, to feel aligned with what you're doing, whether that's personally, whether that's in business. But for us business owners, it has to all come together and really feel that alignment across everything that we're doing. And one of the things that I've become really kind of keen on sort of exploring more is that actually you can turn your passions into profits. And we do that through that alignment, that sort of real clarity of, what that passion means to you, but also what that means to other people when we're business owners, and how you can help people on that journey to not just help them have that impact, but for you to have a business that is in alignment, but also that's sustainable and brings in the money that you need to have a business.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think, so many of us humans struggle with really creating the time and space to realize what is that passion or what is that alignment with what it is we want to say and how it is that we feel, and really bringing all of that together into a business or a message, and to be able to support others in that way, to help them create that time and space, to help them really sort through what is it that I actually want to do? What is it that I actually want to say? What is it that actually matters? And really digging into what matters to us, and not what is the messaging that we're getting from external sources that we think we should want or we think that we should do. So I just think that's so wonderful that you're able to do that with your clients, and it's such an important step in business, in life, with our money, just all of it.
It really is, isn't it? I think, that we all have inner values, we've all got inner strengths. And when we can combine both of those together, and that for me is when that magic happens of not only us living a life that we're happy with and that we're content with, but also means that we can have much more impact from a business perspective because we are living our truths and we are living in a way that I suppose enables us to do the things that we want to do. And that is the ultimate goal, isn't it? That's what a lot of people kind of, you know, describe as success is having that health, that happiness, that alignment, and doing things in the way that they choose to, almost that sort of freedom style of things, and freedom to run a business in the way that you want to, talk about the things that you want to. That's really key. And actually, there are so many people that put boundaries up around that because we feel like we should be doing things, or we feel like we're expected to do things in a certain way. And yeah, I think it's great that you've kind of had that shift and really building that business that feels much more aligned to who you are and what you believe in as well. And we were saying earlier that actually your audience has responded really nicely to that as well, because you started talking more of your truths and you've been sharing your message, that actually your audience has been responding much better to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. It's so important. And I want to delve into not just when we've spoken a little bit around kind of business and setting that up and being that in alignment, but actually when it comes to finances, both from a personal perspective as well as from a business perspective. Um, Talk me through a little bit of how you work with women who are kind of looking to, take control of their finances or, maximize them.
Yeah, so gosh, I would say the one thing that has been a common thread with most of my clients is there's always this sense, and again, I think this does relate to business too. There's always this sense that everyone else kind of knows the secret, or everyone else sort of has things all figured out already. And I will say, I think culturally, we're getting a bit better at realizing that not everyone has it all figured out. There was this time when social media really confused everyone,
Yeah.
and we all thought that everyone had these picture perfect lives, and just this beautiful stream of images in social media. Well, I think a lot of that's been exposed, and I think a lot of people are a little bit more keen to the fact that not everyone has it all together, and this really is just the highlight reel. I think the same is true with money. So there's still the sort of common misconception that everyone else has it figured out, everyone's doing better than me. But when you look around, so often, right, people do really I guess I should say, people do a good job of faking doing well, and dressing a certain way, posting certain pictures, driving certain cars. And it's so easy for us to immediately equate, that looks nice, that must mean everything is going well, that must mean they're making more money than me, that must make, and none of that is good or bad or wrong or right. It's so important that we stop comparing, that we stop assuming, and that we really just focus on, what is it that I want money for? Well, what is it that I want to use my resources for? And am I taking action in alignment with what I say I want? So I had an amazing conversation with a woman yesterday who I'll be working with, and she felt like she was struggling massively. She was really scared about retirement. She's a business owner and is a little worried about her income being a little bit more irregular these days than they have in the past. But here's the thing: she got through a really scary health diagnosis over the summer. She's going through a tough breakup. She experienced tremendous loss during COVID-19 with family. And I said, so and we're talking about all these circumstances. And I thought, my initial reaction was, oh boy, I bet there's a lot of credit card debt. Because typically, when people go through these really tough situations, a lot of times we just shut down the decision making when it comes to money. And I would almost say rightfully so, right? I mean, there's only so much we can handle when life is happening
Yeah.
to us. And so I asked her and I said, okay, so what do we need to dig out of? I didn't put it in those terms, but what's the situation? She said, oh, well, I don't have any debt. My car's almost paid off and I've got, a mortgage. And I thought, really? I mean, that is amazing, right? And so no matter what our circumstances are, we can have that pressure of my income isn't as stable as I would like. And so that means, everything is really hard. Or I I have a mortgage payment that I have to make every month. And that can put a lot of stress on us. I mean, but truly, when it comes down to it, she had this strength of character throughout all of these really tough situations to not put everything on a credit card, to not overspend, to not completely like dig herself into a financial hole that a lot of people do. And so just shining a light on that was so tremendously helpful for her. I'm coming back to this point, I
Yeah.
promise. But just saying, you made some really great decisions. You got through this pretty unscathed. Yeah, we'll focus on how do we save more for retirement. We can talk a little bit about, business and how to make sure you're doing enough outreach to bring in more work, whatever that case is. But shining the light on what really is working and how you really could be a lighthouse or an inspiration to others when it feels like we're always looking for inspiration outside of ourselves. So that's the one thing, and I know it's not very tangible, but that is something that I think is so important about the
Mm.
coaching aspect. Anybody can pick up a book or listen to a podcast about money and budgeting, right? That information is out there. What I really like to do is help women get really centered and figure out what is it that matters most to me and what is it that I am doing that is in alignment with that I should keep doing and celebrate, and what does need to change that I might not even notice I'm doing or notice I have a choice around,
It's
and
so true. I
identifying
think,
those things.
yeah, we're so good at just looking for that next thing, aren't we? Rather than sort of taking stock and acknowledging what we have achieved, regardless of whether it's just money or business successes. I think it's so true that probably especially as women, we're juggling so many things that we tend to, look for that next thing or move on, complete something, move on to that next thing as well. And you're right, that social media world filters out a lot of these kind of things where people are just focusing on all the amazing stuff, which to a certain extent we appreciate that. But I think you're right. We just need to have that check-in point with us sometimes and acknowledge how far we've come. None of us are the finished article. None of us ever will be the finished article. Everyone's on their own journey, and everyone's on a different journey, I think, as well. That, we can't compare because once someone's chapter 2 is very different to someone's chapter 22, but also their lifestyle is different, their family setup is different. There's so many different factors that play into all of these different things. And I think it's just, yeah, it's taking that step off that road every so often and kind of reflecting back and going, okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to get to. But actually, these are the things that I have achieved so far as well. I love that just sort of reminder, I suppose, for all of us to just take a little step and just press pause occasionally and check in and see where we're at with things. Because it's so easy just to keep on going, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think something too that happens with money is that we'll be possibly spending money on something that feels good to us, that we enjoy, but we're afraid that it's not the right decision. So we second guess ourselves. So it might be a subscription box for our kids that just lights them up every single month, or it might be a therapist or a personal trainer, something that really supports our mental or physical health, and feeling like, well, because I don't have this amount of savings or because I'm still paying off this debt, maybe I shouldn't be spending this money. And so we spend it because our intuition tells us it's a good decision. But again, those external factors or that podcast I listened to over there or that book I read over there told me I shouldn't be spending that money. And really having that conflict of, is it right or is it wrong? Am I right because it feels intuitively right? Or should I be second guessing my intuition about all of this month over month over month? And so that's something I really like to help clarify for women too, is that intuition correct? And usually the answer is absolutely it is. So really getting to make that decision once and for all that this is something that I can get behind fully and still work a strategy to save more money or pay off debt. But that decision has been made that the subscription box stays or the therapist stays, and just having that confidence to stick with it.
Yeah, and then that goes back to, the healthy bit that we were talking about right at the beginning of feeling aligned and doing the
Yes,
things that mean something to us, because that's when we're going to get the enjoyment. And it's recognizing maybe we can't do all of those things all the time, but actually which ones are going to enable us to have that meaning that, or the meaning that gives us that enjoyment in life as well. Because that is what it's all about too. We have to enjoy things and we have to do things in the right way, but it's doing it in a way that doesn't necessarily compromise us in the longer term, I suppose.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, one of the things that you've sort of alluded to is the shift from being in quite a rigid structure in the way that you were helping your clients and recognizing that one cookie cutter approach isn't the right approach potentially. Where are you now? What is your sort of philosophy now of kind of helping people and the messaging that you're sort of sharing? Because I think that'd be really interesting for the listeners.
Yeah. So for over 3 years, I was a Ramsey preferred coach. So I taught Dave Ramsey's baby steps. And the one sticking point that really was tough for me was this idea that if you have debt, number one, you should feel pretty badly about it. I didn't agree with that. Number two, um, you should get rid of it absolutely as quickly as possible. And yeah, I think number one and number two, that's mostly it right now. And so what I have really discovered is that the behavior change that needs to happen is that we need to figure out how to live without using new debt and build up a barrier, build up a bit of protection between us and life, and just feel comfortable living that way before we feel like we have to throw absolutely everything we possibly have, as far as money goes, towards debt. So what that looks like is, I meet with women who say, okay, we have all this credit card debt, and it's really, really emotionally draining and frustrating. And every time, we think about it, we just want to throw a payment at it, right? Or a student loan. I'm so frustrated at my student loan, and we take this emotional action and throw an extra payment at it. Now, while in the moment that feels like we're making a really good decision, without having a plan, without having a budget for the month, without knowing sort of where all of our resources are going, we wind up over over paying off the credit card, turning around at the end of the month, not having any money in our checking account, freaking out, using the credit card again. And that cycle builds up this evidence that we have to use a credit card. We're always going to have credit card debt. And even if we try to pay it off, we still have to have a credit card. We still have to use our credit card. And so, what I really like to break is this, a lot of people talk about the paycheck to paycheck cycle. I like to break the credit card, or, like the monthly credit card cycle. And so, what this means is we just take a few months where we really truly commit to not using new debt. And we're not going to necessarily pay a whole bunch of stuff off, but we're really just going to learn how to operate in a month with the resources that we have without having to use the credit card, without having to put anything on payments. And again, if someone wants to use their credit card, that's on them. That's fine. typically my clients are really frustrated with their credit card, so that's who I'm talking to right now. And so it's really just figuring out, how do we build up that confidence? How do we build up that faith? I'm a huge fan of James Clear's Atomic Habits and his philosophy about building habits. And so he talks about this consistency of building up evidence that you are the kind of person who fill in the blank, right? So if you are able to, day over day, week over week, month over month, use your resources, use your income, use your savings, whatever the case is, to, I say get through the month, not like it's hard to do, but to get through the month. And when you do that over and over and over, you're building up the evidence that we don't need a credit card. And so it reduces that emotion, it reduces that stress. So we stop making those, big dramatic reactive payments on things that aren't actually moving the needle forward in the end.
That's amazing. What a light bulb moment for so many people, hopefully, because you're so right. I hear so many people say that they kind of go from that one month to next month, and this, it creates the cycle, doesn't it? And then that credit card bill actually ends up going up rather than kind of over time going down. Really, really interesting. And I think just picking up that it is important to continue doing the things that you enjoy doing, continue to invest in yourself, but doing it on the right things is really key, whether that's for your alignment and going back to your values again, whether it's for that enjoyment piece, but actually focusing on the things you can do rather than the things you can't do. And then I love that bit of what you were saying, it all relates back to mindset that, if we continue to lead in this sort of emotional state and the negative emotions that are associated with debt, then it then becomes really hard to then invest in yourself, and that's where the growth is going to come from. That growth mindset is so different to kind of the downward spiral, downward cycle. And mindset's a huge part of all of this as well, isn't it? Especially when people are, you know, finding it really hard with debt. And, the last 18 months have been really hard for many business owners. But I
Yes.
think it's just, again, taking stock of that and kind of acknowledging it, being aware of that, but then taking action and doing that in a really intentional way. So I love that you're taking the sort of non-cookie cutter approach, that actually everybody is different and that we can, look at that, but you can still move forward. Listening to this, and hopefully it's giving you a little bit of reassurance that you can make changes and you can do them pretty quickly, really, if you're quite intentional with it.
Well, and that's the thing. You don't have to pay off all of your debt overnight to feel better about money, to feel like we've made, that sort of like that overnight success feeling. You can have that overnight success feeling when you spend a day not using your credit card for the first time. I mean, it really is easy to shift the way we feel and shift the way that we're thinking, without reaching that sort of end result that we think is the end all be all. Because I tell you what, paying off all your debt doesn't all of a sudden make money easy. It doesn't all of a sudden make life easy. I mean, if anything, now you have to set a new goal, or you get to set a new goal, I should say. But for some people, when they know, okay, all we have to do is pay off the debt, and then they get there, all of a sudden they think, well, now what? I mean, you think you all of a sudden know, and you don't. So as much as possible, creating, I say a sustainable debt-free journey, but really also joyful, knowing how to spend your money in a way where you are enjoying your life, where you are prioritizing your family or your relationship, your kids, whatever is most important right now and really, really needs your time and attention and resources. Knowing how to do that on the way to debt freedom is going to make it so much easier to continue to live and steward your money well on the other side of it. So I think it's just so important to realize that we can make those shifts right now,
Yeah.
because we're always on the journey, not just on the way to debt freedom. It continues past that.
Definitely. And I talk about the compound effect quite a lot, actually, of just little small tweaks and changes can actually have a huge impact over time. So even just the little things that you're doing can actually really lead to quite dramatic results over time. So it is that compound effect, and also it's that mindset shift as well, that every little positive thing that you're doing encourages you to do a little bit more, doesn't it? So it's a really interesting topic. One of the things that we were talking about before we came online was actually how our life evolves and how that plays an impact on our finances and our debt management and things as well. And, when we're single and we don't have as many responsibilities, but then as we become a mum or a wife or a partner, or, we start running our own business, that all creates different responsibilities and then obviously puts different pressures on different parts of our money situation as well, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And that was a big reason why my messaging had to shift so much, is because when I was young and single, I was able to pay off debt in a way that suited just me. I mean, there was no one else sort of in my inner circle that I had to accommodate. And so sometimes those strategies that are very strict, that are very fast, they can work for people. But even in those instances, I would still say, make sure that you know that there's still a journey on the other side, and you still really want to be in tune with what is aligned for me, meaning what lights me up, what makes me joyful, what is important to me, and am I still including those aspects of life, on this journey. Because it's just like a really strict diet, right? I happen to be a former competitive bodybuilder, and I went through a very, very, very strict 12-week program that was only 12 weeks, but it felt like it lasted years, right? And that created a very short-lived eating disorder, very, very serious health implications. Just 12 weeks of eating a very, very, very strict diet, complete, and I will remember those 12 weeks for the rest of my life. I mean, it was just a blip on the radar, but it had such a big impact. And so for some people, if you spend a year or 2 years never doing anything that feels right to you, but just throwing every single dollar at debt, yes, you might reach that desired outcome of being debt free. But you might also really struggle at the end of that. I mean, your relationships might be really tense. You might not know what to do with money beyond that point and spend it all. You might be perfectly successful. I mean, but the point is that very, very strict way of doing things can just be so detrimental. And I've just seen that the relationship between the two, the money and the diet, sort of with clients before that. I just caution people to be so strict for such a long period of time, um, because we can really lose ourselves in that.
Yeah, and again, I think the last year and a half has probably it has restricted us on so many different things, with being shut in our houses, not being able to have human connection with our friends and family. And we've really, I suppose, looked at different ways that we can find enjoyment, find doing different things. But as humans, we're not very good at being restricted, are we? We don't want to be put in a box or put in a cage. And it doesn't mean that there are elements that we shouldn't pull back on and manage debt and, still pay it off. But actually, I think what you're saying is that we still need to have enjoyment. We still need to live. We still need to be able to do some of the things that light us up, have experiences, because what happens once you have paid that debt off? What does that life look like if you've restricted everything for however many months or years that it's taken you to do that?
Right, right. And I think too, I mean, again, for some people, going quickly and being competitive and getting excited about paying it off as a couple, or if you're single, that can be really great too. The point here is that it's not for everyone, and the same cookie cutter plan doesn't necessarily work for everyone. And so if you're one of those people that feels like, I can't do this plan effectively, therefore I must not be cut out for paying off debt, that is just not true. So that is I think the big message here is that of course it'll work for some people and it won't work for other people. And it might really just be helpful for women to hear there's another strategy. There are other ways, and finding something that is joyful and sustainable is what I think is the most important element to finding that debt-free journey that does work best for you.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what you do is that it's that sustainability, it's that really kind of longer term approach that actually, what do you want life to look like after this? And that will take different lengths of time for people to get there, depending on, their goals or the amount of debt that they have. But yeah, so, so interesting. What is like for people post debt? How do you help people with that as well? So obviously we've talking a lot about debt and kind of managing that journey. And we've kind of touched on, being aware of what people want post that. How would you help people from a I suppose people that have money there available that are wanting to invest or, multiply that money. What does that look like for you and how you work with people?
So I'm not a financial advisor, so I help them find someone that can be part of their lifelong journey to help them with investing money. The piece that I really do at that point, because like I said, when we get to that end goal, right, we sort of reach that, okay, I'm debt free. A lot of people kind of look around and think, well, wait a minute, now what? Or I thought I would know what to do next, or even I never really thought I'd actually get here, and so now what do I do? And when that happens, a lot of times there's a lot of self-reflection that starts to happen. And now that we don't have this big push, this big goal that we're working towards, we have to sort of sit with ourselves and realize, oh, I'm the same person that I was basically at the beginning of this journey. I've made a lot of there's been a lot of growth. You always become someone different on your journey to something, but you're still the same person. And so a lot of people have to deal with that and say, oh my gosh, I'm not all of a sudden this like amazing money maven. I don't all of a sudden know exactly what to do. And so just really helping people sort through again, well, what is most important to you? What is it that you do want to spend your money on? How would you like to save for vacations, or how much money are you giving? What do you want to do with your money? And for so many people, they can just kind of sit there and keep doing the same thing they've always been doing because they don't know anything
Yeah.
different, especially if they did take more of an intense approach towards paying off debt. So we really just sit with, okay, what's important to you? How do you want to spend, aligned with your values? Make sure that we're always making room for things that are most important to you. And what does that look like? It's the same, it's really the same message. It's just it feels like a much different set of resources that we can put towards those things. And that can be scary. It really can. And
Yeah.
then, of course, yeah, making sure everyone is plugged in with someone who can help them grow money down the road, make sure that they do have retirement set up. If they have kids, how do we want to pay for college? If in the States, that's a huge question is, how do we pay for college? And just looking at those next steps that maybe have been put on the shelf for a long time.
Yeah. Suddenly their goals are met and it's like, okay, well, what is next? I think
Mhm.
it's interesting, isn't it? And I guess there's probably a little bit in there around creating healthy habits that they don't retreat back into those old patterns and,
Absolutely.
focusing on what they want to do going forward rather than, kind of dwelling on that piece that's happened previously.
Yes, absolutely. That's a huge piece of it too. And luckily, a lot of people, again, on that journey, especially if it's sustainable, if it takes long enough, and sometimes it needs to take a little bit of time. If it takes long enough, you really do create those new habits on the way. And so most of my clients, they are ready, they are excited when they do hit debt freedom. But there's always more work to do. And, like you said before, we're never finished. We're never there,
Yeah.
right? Where's there? We're never there.
No,
So
exactly. No, it's always the longer term, I think, isn't it? We always want more, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just knowing what we need to do. I love our conversation because it feels like we've kind of gone right back into what we were talking about at the beginning of that alignment. It's what do you want? How do you want to spend your time, your money, and and what on? It really is about that sort of that inner peace that we really need to get clarity on, that awareness of. And as soon as we do that, then we can start taking those actions, small or big, fast or slow. It's all about that just awareness, I think, and then really being able to put that plan in place. Amazing. Okay, so if someone is listening to this and thinking, how on earth do I make that first step of, debt freedom or starting that journey? It'd be great if you can share kind of where people can find you, but also some top tips on taking that first step, because for some people it is scary. It's a change into something totally different, and we can in some ways get used to having that debt there and thinking we're never going to clear it through, but we know that that's not the case.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the best tips I can give anyone is, if you do feel like you want to start sort of on a new path, on a new journey, I would challenge you to just take 3 months and plan what you want to do with your money before the month begins, and just get it down on paper. And if you screw it up halfway through, that's fine. Do it again the next month. So give yourself a few months and actually plan out, what is it that I want to do with my money in this month. And as much as possible, let's not rely on debt to get through those 3 months. So don't worry about paying off debt. Don't worry about how much money you're saving necessarily, but just start with that intention and that focus on your money and on your plan. And that alone over 90 days can make a huge impact, because it will bring up a lot of questions for you and you will go looking for those answers, right? So just start with that simple activity. If you would like support with how to do that, please join me in my Facebook group, The Simplified Budget. I offer a week-long budgeting bliss workshop about 4 times a year, so stay tuned for when that's available. And then, of course, I offer 2-hour coaching intensives and monthly coaching packages as well. And if you would like to really work on the credit card piece, breaking up with your credit card, stopping that cycle, I have a free resource for that, which is called 9 Ways to Break Up with Your Credit Card. It is a PDF that walks you through the steps, but there's also audio clips for each of the 9 steps where I sort of walk you through the process and give you some helpful tips and hints about that as well. So that is available as well. That's totally free, my gift to you.
Amazing. Some really, really useful tips there, but also such an insightful conversation, and hopefully a bit of reassurance for people who are wondering how they're going to clear that debt. And I know things have been tricky for many people over the last few months, but there is a way out, and we can absolutely be proactive with that. And yeah, I've loved our conversation. Thank you so much, Katy, for joining me today.
I have too so much. Thank you, Sarah. It's been great to be here.